Good morning and welcome to Mosaic. I'm Rabbi Eric Weiss and honored to be your host this morning. The world is so complex, and one of the ways in which we are able to interact with its complexity is by developing the simple skill of reading, the way in which we learn from books, the way in which books teach us, and the way in which we're able to interact in the world by what we learn from what we read. And so we'd like to invite you into a wonderful conversation this morning with Vivien Braly, who is the program coordinator for PJ Library, and Howard Freedman, who is the director of the Jewish Community Library here in San Francisco. Welcome, Vivien and Howard.
Thank you very much.
It's a great pleasure.
Let's just jump in. And Vivien, what is PJ Library?
So PJ Library, the PJ stands for pajamas, is a program of the Jewish Community Federation of San Francisco, and it provides free Jewish children's books and music to kids in the Bay Area, starting at 6 months through the age of 8. We also have another program that's relatively new in our community called PJ Our Way, which are chapter books and graphic novels that are also free with Jewish content for kids 9 to 11 years of age.
Fantastic. And is PJ Library just a local program, or is it something that...
It's an international program. It was started here in the U.S., but it currently is in 12 different countries, and in the past 10 years has given away over 12 million books just in the United States and Canada.
Fantastic. And I know we're going to come back to PJ Library, but Howard, why don't we talk a little bit about what the Jewish Community Library is here in San Francisco?
Sure. The Jewish Community Library is a full-service library, sort of like any other, except that we are basically only dealing with Jewish topics. But that said, it's really with the whole gamut of the Jewish experience, not only religion, but culture and history, and from every perspective that imaginable. And we have a small branch at the Palo Alto JCC and San Francisco JCC, in addition to our main branch in San Francisco.
I was thinking that, you know, we can in some ways take reading for granted. That's something that we have the luxury of here in the Bay Area, certainly not immune from issues of illiteracy, but in the Bay Area we have a high degree of literacy and interaction with books and reading, and it's something we kind of take for granted. So I'm wondering if each of you can talk a little bit about the kinds of programs that you offer, the ways in which people interact with your books, with reading, and what that does for folks. So I wonder, Howard, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the programs at the Jewish Community Library, and then we can ask Vivien.
Sure. From my angle, I certainly don't take it for granted that we read, and actually maybe we can talk later that I think we're having a lot of challenges both with time and technology that's having an impact on the degree to which we read meaningfully. One of the things that we really try to do at the library is to promote reading in book groups, and a lot of our programming is devoted to helping people get together and read books together, and also to interact with authors and lecturers, but with really a goal of stimulating reading as an activity.
And Vivien?
So for PJ Library, what we know is that reading has such a huge impact on brain development and emotional development and language development in kids, especially in those critical ages, 5 and under. And so PJ Library really wants to enhance that sacred time of parents reading to their children at bedtime, and that's why we call it PJ, where you're in your pajamas, you're listening to stories from your parents, and really infuse those moments with Jewish content and stories. There's really, Jewish values are universal values that so many people can relate to. And when you read to a child, you're really connecting with them in a different way. And it's so important for bonding and for really, for children to just appreciate stories and have their imagination just go to different places. And really with a busy day, to just be calm and be in a story and be taken away. It's a beautiful time for families.
We're going to take a quick break in just a moment, but before we do, can you say just in a very concrete way, how does somebody actually just sign up for PJ Library?
In a variety of ways. The easiest way is online. We have a website at pjlibrary.org. You can easily enroll for any child in your family. Each child gets their own book delivered straight to their home in the mail, and it's entirely free. So children are thrilled to get their own books. The envelope comes with their name on it, and every month they have a new story to read about a holiday coming up, or a story about a brave young girl or boy, or something that children can relate to and learn from.
Wonderful. Vivien, Howard, we're going to take a quick break and come back to Mosaic in just a moment. Please join us back here on Mosaic in just a moment. Good morning and welcome back to Mosaic. I'm Rabbi Eric Weiss and honored to be your host this morning. We're in the middle of a wonderful and important conversation about reading and all the ways in which reading functions in our lives, especially in a complex world. And so I'd like to reintroduce you to Vivien Braly, who is the program coordinator of the PJ Library, PJ meaning pajamas, and Howard Freedman, who is the director of the Jewish Community Library here in San Francisco. Welcome back, Howard and Vivien.
Thank you.
Howard, we were talking a little bit before the break about the notions of taking reading for granted and how reading is changing and how that impacts perhaps the way we even understand the world. And so I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more to that and the ways in which the programming at the Jewish Community Library actually, in the most basic sense, encourages reading.
Sure. From my perspective, I sometimes judge it by my experience on the bus. Say if it was 15 years ago, a lot of people were reading physical books on the bus. 10 years ago, a lot of them switched to Kindles. Nowadays, most people have their head in their phones. And part of what that tells me, and what I know from speaking with a lot of people, is that there is less reading of fiction and nonfiction, more sustained reading among adults than there was. A lot of people are doing Facebook. A lot of people are communicating on their phones. And the truth is that our time is less than what it once was. Many of us, especially in the Bay Area, which is so tech savvy, bring our office home to us, home at night. We have all of our email, all of our documents in the cloud. We're not making the same kind of our reading is suffering. So one of the things that we do in the library really is to try to call attention to the importance of reading, and I think it is quite important, and create opportunities for people to want to read in order to share their experiences, to learn about the books they read from other people's perspectives, and to share experiences with authors. We have lots of opportunities for people to make reading more central to their lives, and that's a priority.
Interesting. So you said sustained reading, so meaning that part of what you observe is that maybe I'm just sort of thinking this sort of out loud, that because we only have a focus for an email duration, that's not sustained reading, and that sustained reading is a novel, a story, a book, something chapter after chapter. Is that what you mean by sustained reading?
Correct. And there's actually a lot of research being done. I think one of the issues that we have with the digital age is that a lot of our habits have changed faster than we've sort of had a sense of what the research tells us. And the research that's happening now is really telling us that the kind of reading that we do that's more leisurely, that's taking in information in a deeper way, affects our brain. It enters us in a different way than, say, the articles we read when we're referred to when we're looking on our tablet or on our phone. And we're sort of substituting one kind of reading for that other kind of reading. And our encounter with the world is changing as a result.
Interesting. And so, Vivien, PJ Library, literally when you sign up,
yes,
your child gets a book. Perhaps one of the books that is here on the table literally gets a book in the mail.
Yep.
And so the assumption is that that child is going to be sitting down with an adult in their lives, probably typically a parent, but might be a different adult in their lives, literally reading the full book to them out loud.
Yes, and when they sign up, the books are age appropriate and developmentally appropriate. So babies would get board books and so on. They grow as the child grows. But yes, in the very early ages, those books would be read to kids. And I would just say on Howard's point about attention span and technology, it's really important to have books in your home, that kids see that they see that you're reading as a parent, that reading is important to you, and not only just reading to your child, but reading in general. Kids need to see that, and they need to see parents off their cell phones at home and off their computers. We at PJ Library have been struggling with the idea of putting books on Kindles, because many families use Kindles now than paper books. And what we keep coming back to is there's something magical about having no technology and having that just a paper book in front of you that you could turn the pages together and point at the different illustrations and talk about the story. It really is a way to engage your child on a whole different level and have an their undivided attention, both as a parent and as a child. Each PJ Library book has informational flaps on either side that talks a little bit about the content of the story, what the Jewish holiday may be that's being celebrated, or the value that the book illustrates. It also has recipes or online links if you want to learn more. But the idea is to do some hands-on activities too at home with your kid based on the story that's being told. So it really encourages downtime and a time just exclusively that's meant for learning.
Interesting. We're going to come back and continue this conversation in just a moment here on Mosaic. Good morning and welcome back to Mosaic. We're in the middle of a wonderful conversation with Vivien Braly, who is the program coordinator for the PJ Library, and Howard Freedman, who is the director of the Jewish Community Library here in San Francisco, talking about reading and the importance of reading in a complex world. Howard, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the programs that the library has, such as the One Bay, One Book Club program?
Sure. The library does a lot to support book clubs. Book clubs are so wonderful, and one of the great parts about being in the Bay Area is that so many people are involved in informal experiences like book clubs, and we try to support them by providing, through our Book Club in a Box program, 12 copies of a given title. We have 120 titles for people to choose from, and they're available free to any book club that's interested to borrow for a month or two. And then we have one book in which we select one book for a given year that we invite readers throughout the Bay Area to read and discuss together. Our selection this year is called Septembers of Shiraz. It's a novel by Dalia Sofer that's set in Iran just after the revolution. And it's about a family that's stuck there, and the father is unfairly imprisoned. It's a fine book, and the author, Dalia Sofer, will be coming to speak both in Palo Alto and San Francisco in June with all the people who've been reading the book this year.
If somebody has never been a part of a book club or is interested in joining a book club or starting a book club, what kind of services actually would that person get for constructing their own book club and choosing a book? What do they get from the library?
Well, one thing is we have a drop-in book club at the library for people who are not part of a book group and maybe don't want that level of commitment. But we also help people set up their own and help people connect to other people, and then have a guide to holding effective discussions, and of course then have all these books to choose from, making it easy to start up.
Oh, so we should say that the contact information for the Jewish Community Library is to go on the web at jewishcommunitylibrary.org or to call you at 415-567-3327.
And one thing I do want to mention is that we've actually done book clubs with kids with a number of the books that are available in PJ Our Way, which Vivien, a program which Vivien runs. And for me, this has been wonderful because when kids are at that age, and we're talking about the late elementary grades primarily, they can now engage with Jewish history, with aspects of the Jewish experience that are much harder to share when a kid is much younger. We've had very rich discussions, for instance, in a book called The Secrets of the House of Delgado, about experiences during the Spanish Inquisition, a book called Black Radishes, about a boy in the 1930s in France. There are fantastic ways to start exploring the Jewish historical experience, which doesn't get shared generally in school or even religious school often.
So Vivien, when somebody, for example, has a child and they sign up for PJ Library, that child gets their own book once a month from, say, birth until?
They can sign up at birth. The books actually start at 6 months, and they go all the way through the age of 8. So a child that signs up as a baby could get a free book a month until they are through the age of 8. And at that point, we want to continue this beautiful PJ Library experience, and they can sign up for our PJ Our Way program, which Howard mentioned, which is geared towards kids 9 to 11 years of age. They sign up online at pjourway.org, and what's nice about that program is they can choose the book that they get every month for free. So they can really read reviews of the books and figure out what subject they're interested in and choose that book every month. So there's also book clubs online, and you can review the books online. So it's a nice way for kids to connect online in a safe environment to discuss reading in the books.
The Bay Area is so diverse,
Yes.
and one of the things about the Bay Area is that so many of us are interconnected with family nationally and internationally. And so if somebody here in the Bay Area is listening about PJ Library, but they have their family in a different state, a different country, then can they access PJ Library?
Absolutely. PJ Library is available in over 200 communities across the U.S. It's also in Canada, Australia, United Kingdom, Russia, Latin America. And so they can sign up online, they can Google PJ Library, and they can find the country in which their child is, and they can easily sign them up. And in fact, if they go on our website and even put in the zip code of the child, it'll pop up which community they can sign up in.
Fantastic.
So,
we're going to take another quick break and come back in just a moment here on Mosaic. Good morning and welcome to Mosaic. I'm Rabbi Eric Weiss and honored to be your host. We're about to end, unfortunately, a wonderful conversation about reading in a complex world with Vivien Braly, the program director of PJ Library, and Howard Freedman, the director of the Jewish Community Library. Welcome back, Howard and Vivien.
Great, thank you.
We've been talking so much about the power of reading and trends in reading and the diversity of the books that actually are both certainly in the library itself, but also within the context of PJ Library and the books that a child from 6 months to 8 years old and beyond can receive every month. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what trends you see in children's literature, in the kinds of books that are being written, in the kind of books that are being read, the kind of books that people are interested in. I'm wondering, maybe Howard, we can start with you, and Vivien, you can chime in, and also maybe we can talk a little bit about the actual diversity of the books that are available through PJ
Absolutely.
Library. Howard.
Well, actually, it's an important question. You know, we just had a survey of the Bay Area Jewish community that found that about a quarter of Bay Area Jews live in households with people of color, who may be Jewish themselves, may not be. But it's very important that we realize and act on the knowledge that we are a very diverse community. The truth is, I know Jewish children's books pretty well, and they have not historically reflected that fact. And it's a wonderful thing to see that we're really starting to see the emergence of many more Jewish children's books that reflect the ethnic and national and religious diversity of Jews, so that kids can grow up with a sense of that dark-skinned Jews are no different as Jews from Jews with light skin. That's a very important thing for people to grow up with, and we're seeing that now, and I'm very happy.
And for PJ Library, absolutely we embrace the diverse Jewish community that's really reflected across the country, but I would say no more so than in the Bay Area. We know that this is our community, we welcome it, and we want to embrace it. And so we want that reflected in our books as well. And so it is a priority to not only have diverse families, but also female-driven main characters, which is really something families are looking for. They've always looked for it, and especially now when we're really embracing the power of women, to have little girls read about bravery and all these wonderful Jewish role models we have in history of women who've stepped up. So in terms of diversity, it was a book that came out in November in honor of Hanukkah. It's brand new. I've received actually several emails about it from local families about this book. It's called The Queen of the Hanukkah Dosas, and it's a wonderful book about a Hindu-Jewish family that incorporates the Indian dosas, which are similar to latkes, into their holiday plans. And in this story, there's a precocious little sister who ends up saving the day. And so it reflects this kind of lovely family that really represents all of different skin colors and what makes up a family. No family is alike these days, and it's important for not only parents but also for kids to see themselves reflected in our books. It makes them feel valued. It makes them feel like they're a part of our community, and we want that. It's important for families to know that the Jewish community embraces them.
It seems important when we're talking about children's books that when we talk about diversity, that's a big word.
Yeah.
And that it seems to me when we get really concrete about it, what it breaks down to is that an illustration reflects a child of color, a Jew of color,
Yep.
and a diversity of, let's say, skin color in a family, but also reflects different behaviors so that there are ways in which we give signals that diversity is wonderful by the way the story reflects cooking and food, or a celebration, or an outing, or something that they go do in terms of interacting with the world around them. Are there other ways in which you think the books reflect diversity for a child's mind that build those building blocks of inclusion?
Absolutely. I can think of a certain book that I absolutely love from PJ Library called The Only One Club. And it's about a little girl who goes to public school, and she feels that she's the only Jew in the class. And what she soon discovers is that she's yes, she may be the only Jewish child, but there are other children who are the only ones with red hair, or the only ones with freckles, or so everyone has their own uniqueness, and to embrace that in a real way.
Howard and Vivien, believe it or not, we've come to the end of our conversation together. So we put a comma in the conversation, so to speak, and we encourage you to please pay attention to reading and to books, and in particular, the children in your lives. Thank you so much for being with us here on Mosaic.